A family lost custody of their 16-year-old autistic child after refusing to let their child undergo a gender transition. The family has reportedly sued the hospital that assisted in transitioning their child. Let's get into the details. Hey everyone, welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. And I promise you, stories like this aren't talked about in mainstream media. In fact, they're being covered up. Today, I need to ask for your patience for two things. One, I am fighting big Rona right now. You can tell my chest is kind of just tight and my voice sounds a little different. But I also need to ask for your patience in episodes specifically like this, as the pronoun game, it's going to get a little tricky for me. The problem with this story is that we don't have names for any of the parties involved because the lawsuit, this exclusive story I'm about to share with you, it was all filed anonymously, so just bear with me through this. I still think this story is so worthwhile. Okay, so the DailyMail has the exclusive on this story and the lawsuit. And so this story follows a military family that lives in Maryland, kind of the DC area, and their 16-year-old, who is a biological male, was treated in a Washington, D.C. hospital. According to this article, the family said their boy had become, I guess, suicidal of sorts and had never shown any desire to become a girl at 16, but was, again, self-harming after a, quote, bitter breakup with his girlfriend in 2021. The family then took their child to Children's National Hospital, and according to the family's lawsuit, the staff said the problem wasn't because of the bitter breakup. The staff said it's because the child actually wanted to be female, and so the staff really encouraged the parents to use she, her pronouns for their biologically male child going forward. The child's parents are Army veterans. They live in Prince George, Maryland, and they rejected this suggestion, saying their son was actually impressionable because he is autistic. And the parents have accused the hospital of starting a full-on campaign to transgender their child and accused staff of mental reprogramming, saying their son had been forced to write letters to friends disavowing his previous male identity. Now, here's where the story gets unhinged. So the hospital called Child Protective Services on the parents for refusing to abide by the hospital's preferred gender narrative. The article reads, the hospital used its emergency policies to keep the boy in its units and reported the children or the parents to Child Protective Services. The boy was then moved into foster care and hasn't been back to the family home since. What's followed has been a 2-year legal battle for custody over the teen, who is now 19 and remains in foster care. The parents are in their 40s and they're African American, and they say their son was at risk because his condition of autism they're referring to means he is vulnerable to social manipulation. This family spoke exclusively to DailyMail.com but wants to remain anonymous to protect their estranged son's privacy. This is slightly off topic, and I was just thinking about it, but I do think it ties the bow on this problem quite nicely, actually. So I just am thinking, like, every time I talk to liberals about abortion, one of the main arguments is that the foster care system is so terrible. We are actually cruel, pro-life people for encouraging people to have their baby and put him or her up for adoption. But then, in this scenario, a child is in a loving home where the parents don't affirm a child's delusion, and all of a sudden the foster care system is like the best thing since sliced bread. That's just beyond unreasonable.
You're being unreasonable.
But back to the article, filing a lawsuit against the hospital has actually been devastating for this family. In the article, it says the father said specifically, this has been devastating. It drained so much money. There is no money left. The boy's father revealed how they had to sell their thriving business and 4-bedroom family home to cover legal costs. Quote, it's changed our entire way of life with the loss of a child and then with the loss of our income. One of the DC Republican Party members, too, he's a committee member for the DC Republican Party, his name is Carl von Batten, said that this cause is personal to him because he also has an autistic son. And we have seen that this is a common thing, that individuals who identify as transgender also tend to be on the spectrum. The family, the African-American family that lives in Maryland, they are seeking up to $100 million in damages and cover for their legal costs. And here comes the most insane part. This child is living with a person named Lavender Kelly, who is apparently the hospital's chaplain. I can't even fathom that this is real life, but this is Lavender Kelly, who is believed to be currently caring for the family's child. The individual says online that Lavender Kelly doesn't have a gender. The lawsuit says the child is currently living with the hospital's non-gendered chaplain, who regularly posts online about transgender issues. In one post on Facebook from 2022, Kelly said that Kelly supports transitioning children without their parents' consent, saying they were, quote, drained from arguing with family. The lawsuit adds that since being removed from the care of his parents, the youngster has appeared in provocative and sexually suggestive poses on Instagram. It's unclear whether the 19-year-old has received any gender transition treatments like feminizing hormones or gender reassignment surgery. The lawsuit was filed in the Maryland District Court, accusing Children's National Hospital of 8 counts, including negligence, inflicting intentional emotional distress, and discriminating against someone based on their religion. It has been sealed by a judge and is now in the Fourth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. Otherwise, I would have pulled this lawsuit up for you guys. And in a statement, the hospital said that the case has actually been withdrawn by the parents' lawyers, but the parents' lawyers deny this. And critics of the hospital's intervention have agreed with the family and said that the hospital's actions were, quote, unconstitutional. Mike Davis, who is the head of the Article 3 project, and in all likelihood could be the attorney general under a future Trump administration, Mike said that this is clearly unconstitutional. Parents, not the government, have the fundamental constitutional right to raise their kids, and these parents are protecting their kids from irreversible harm. This is a criminal conspiracy against constitutional rights, truly monstrous. But I'm honestly not so sure that the lawsuit against the hospital would stand up in a court of law. In the 20th century, we had countless Supreme Court precedents that held up a parent's fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their child. But that changed at the beginning of the 21st century in a case called Troxel. I don't want to get too legalistic, but this great website called parentalrights.org really detailed out how there were, as you can see, just countless examples of Supreme Court precedent that upheld the values of parental direction, of the religious upbringing and education of children in the early informative years, that this is just a part and parcel of our society. And then we saw in this 2000 Troxel ruling that there's now no clear precedent. There was a Washington state law that gave any person the ability to override a good parent's decision about visitation, or just good decision in general, by simply claiming that it would be best, quote unquote, for children to allow the third party to have visitation rights. So put in short, basically what's happening here is that a good parent's decision can be overruled by what is, quote, best for a child. And unfortunately in Washington, D.C., what is best for the child is gender transition according to those in charge in that district. That's why this fight isn't just cultural. Yes, it is about changing the culture. It's also about changing those who are in power and fighting back against powerful organizations, specifically fighting against organizations like the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, which sets these standards of care. And this isn't the first time we've seen stories like this. Absolutely not. We've also seen stories like New York father loses legal battle to stop his son, 8 years old, from taking puberty blockers to change gender. For this story, Montana family who lost custody of their 14-year-old daughter after refusing to let her transition to a boy reveals their torment. This mentality, in the name of honest to God pseudoscience, is ripping families apart. And when we talk about issues of this magnitude, especially like family issues, I know it feels daunting because we really want to help. At least that's always my first inclination, but this is how we can help. We can vote for people who will end this madness. Right now, Democratic vice presidential nominee Tim Walz is allowing the state of Minnesota to take children from their parents' custody if the parents don't agree with the gender transition. And the media call this a lie. There's actually this interview right now circulating between an ABC News, I'm going to call this person a propagandist because they're no journalist, and he is interviewing JD Vance. And this is all over right now because it's showcasing the media bias when it comes to this issue of gender.
And finally, before you go, we commit to this race to kind of sticking to the facts. I mean, I heard Donald Trump give this speech in Montana he just gave, and he said that Tim Walz has signed a letter letting the state kidnap children to change their gender, that allowing pedophiles to claim, to be exempt from crimes. I mean, this is not true. It's not remotely true.
Well, what President Trump said, and I haven't watched the whole rally.
What he said was not true.
What President Trump said, John, is that Tim Walz has supported taking children from their parents if the parents don't consent to gender reassignment. That is crazy. And by the way, Tim Walz gets on his high horse about mind your own damn business. One way of minding your own damn business, John, is to not try to take my children away from me if I have different moral views than you. He has not signed a law allowing the state to kidnap children to change.
So in natural Chrissy Clark fashion, I had to find the bill and figure out who was telling the truth. Section 3 of the Minnesota bill on gender transitions reads, temporary emergency jurisdiction. A court of the state has temporary emergency jurisdiction if the child is present in this state and the child has been unable to obtain gender-affirming health care as defined in section 543.23. Doesn't matter. You can read it for yourself. I'm not making this up. The media is lying to you about what the government wants to do. And that's to build a chasm between parents and their children. When you see politicians supporting legislation like this, they're supporting the story of a 16-year-old autistic child getting stripped from his parents and put into foster care under a they-them chaplain. I don't know about you, but that's certainly not the America that I want to live in.
No, me either.
If you're a real story seeker and you made it to the end of this show, will you drop the mind explosion emoji? I've actually copied and pasted it into the description for you. Also say a prayer for my recovery from Big Rona, and I will see you guys here next time. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment about how beautiful, stunning, and funny I am. And if you want more content based in logic, be sure to click over here for more videos and clips of my show. If you have the means to financially support the show, consider purchasing from my merch line, Based Apparel, linked right below. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye, friends.